Oh, sorry.
Easily erasable.
Okay, so not the change we're looking for, eh? Okay, so the nice thing about our process we're going to follow, guys, is there's practical applications. So it's not just yada yada fish paste, we go through theory and nothing is able to be put into practice. So you cannot step twice into the same river, for other waters are continually flowing through it. So as I said, human nature, we like to change. And just an introduction to our process, guys. I'm going to take you through a lot of the information. And yes, it is a big topic, and we have to be cautious to not go into information overload. And from that point of view, also make sure that you guys have 100% clarity for the content and how you can implement some of the theory. So from that perspective, the rules of interaction for today, please take notes. I know you guys are hickishly busy and you're traveling around. Leading Training is recording the session, so you will have access to the recording sessions for reference if need be. We'll use the mute button, but please do engage as far as possible. If you have any questions, please raise your hand either virtually or physically. And if I don't see your hand while presenting, just give me a shout out, please. Don't put questions into the chat unless you have a problem with your mic and you want something clarified. Otherwise, please give me a shout out. We're going to make sure we have a couple of breakout sessions along the way. I know it's difficult for anyone to sit still in a stagnant position, so if you are getting a bit lethargic, we'll take that body break, and it's around we'll do a regular 10 to 15 minutes just for you guys to grab a cup of coffee, do some stuff that you need to do, and then we'll continue with the process. Okay, so to start off with awareness, one of the realities of our training environment, I'd like you to watch the video and see if you pick up anything.
Clearly, somebody in this room murdered Lord Smythe, who, at precisely 3:34 this afternoon, was brutally bludgeoned to death with a blunt instrument. I want each of you to tell me your whereabouts at precisely the time that this dastardly deed took place.
I was polishing the brass in the master bedroom.
I was buttering his lordship's scones below stairs, sir.
Why, I was planting my petunias in the potting shed.
Constable, arrest Lady Smythe.
But how did you know?
Madam, as any horticulturist will tell you, one does not plant petunias until May is out. Take her away.
That's right, madam.
It's just a matter of observation. The real question is, how observant were you?
During that video clip, 21 changes. Did any of you notice it?
Action.
Clearly, somebody in this room murdered Lord Smythe, who, at precisely 3:34 this afternoon, was brutally bludgeoned to death with a blunt instrument. I want each of you to tell me your whereabouts at precisely the time that this dastardly deed took place.
I was polishing the brass in the master bedroom.
I was buttering his lordship's scones below stairs, sir.
Why, I was planting my petunias in the potting shed.
Constable, arrest Lady Smythe.
Okay, so very easy to miss something you're not looking for. Right, so what I'd like to do before we kick off is I'd like you to do a brief introduction of yourself so I can get to know you better. What is your name and your role? What are you expecting to take away from this course? And what are the current challenges you're facing with change management? So I'll give you a couple of minutes to do some prep around that. You can populate it into the chat box or you can just shout it out for me.
Yes. Need to know what is change management, because if I don't know what is change management, it makes it hard for me to know the challenges with regards to change management.
Change is where the company makes a change in policy, change in ownership, change in standard operating procedures, change in protocol, change in your role. So anything where it shifts from point A to point B, and where point B forces you to shift your comfort zone. So it's something new. And if you look at, in this environment we're working in now, the pandemic in the last 18 months has shifted us all, or catapulted us all into a change space, both economically, both personally, and professionally.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, it's everything to do with shifting, and it's morphing from one state to another. The ideal is that it does for the better, but in general, we as individuals don't enjoy change.
True. Happy.
Okay. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to look at that.
I can go first, Luis. Is that okay?
Yes, 100%, Victor. Thanks.
Okay, I'm Victor. I'm the radio station manager at Vision View Sports Radio. It's an extension of Vision View Productions, the big company.
Okay.
So I'm on the radio side of the production company.
Okay.
So yeah, that means daily running of radio programs with multiple personalities coming and going, from producers, presenters, creative people in general. That's what I do here.
Okay. And your expectations for the course, Victor?
I'm curious, to be honest. I can't wait to learn something new. I think if it says inevitable, it means that it might be something I'm encountering already. I just don't know that it's change management,
Yes.
So I hope I will learn a bit more, and I'll have more clarity on certain things that I might be dealing with already.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much, Victor.
Cool.
Lunga Kagiso, from your side?
Kagiso?
Yes.
Kagiso Mutaung from Vision View Productions. I'm a content producer, sports producer for SuperSport. Yeah, man, we just make fun stuff for TV.
Yeah, enjoy it.
And like Victor said, with the expectations, maybe it's something that we have been doing it, but we were not consciously aware that it's a change in management thing, because if we don't know, maybe we are forced to go with it.
Yes.
And we don't know how to apply the change for the better, because we always see the worst thing, because the comfort is always nice.
Awesome. Just from that point, Kagiso, change management is quite a new concept, although it's always been around. Only about 25 years ago that we coined it and said, okay, we're going to call this change management, because our rate of change has gone so, has put so much pressure on us as business. And I mean, we'll look at some examples that are relevant to you guys, and we'll also look at everyday examples like a cell phone. You know the discomfort when you get a new cell phone, that you actually carry your old cell phone with you for a bit until you're 100% comfortable with your new phone.
You are talking to me. They gave us new phones. I don't want them. I'm happy.
Yeah, that is exactly what change management is. It equips you with the theory and the understanding of what to do to progress. So yeah, we all have that sentiment. I mean, that's the most simple example I can use. So it happens on a day-to-day basis. But thanks for that, Kagiso.
Oh.
Okay, Lunga.
My name is Lunga Mlandu. I'm a producer at Vision View Productions. What am I expected? Just to learn something new from this course. I like learning something new and learning other people's opinions on the matter, and challenges with regards to change management. Just in general, I think change takes time. Good change takes time, and I think it starts at the top. Which is more difficult to happen, which doesn't happen every day. But yeah, like for good change to take place, it starts at the top, and that's my understanding of it. And it's difficult to do when it takes time as well.
Yeah, it's that uncomfortable shift.
Yes.
Okay, guys, thanks. We'll get the other guys to do their introduction. Just very briefly about myself. I'm obviously a facilitator for the 2 days. I've been doing this for over 30 years, and I am still one of those nutters that I absolutely love what I do and do what I love. I'm very involved in the HR space, training up in managers and entrepreneurs. I'm also an HR practitioner for the SABP, which is our professional platform for HR, a member of the South African Institute of Management, so STS, assessor, moderator, life coach, and consultant. My change is every day. I've got 5 teenagers at home, 2 sets of twins, and a very complicated, low EQ 15-year-old. The roll the eyes and whatever, highly intelligent, no filter. So yeah, if you see me twitching and grabbing for my cup of coffee every 5 minutes, you know why. And my passion is working with people like yourselves that are hungry to learn. Yes, a lot of this stuff is going to be generic. You probably have known or very familiar with a lot of the theories, but guys, it's nice to learn. And I think what's also a bonus is this is an accredited course, so it builds to your skills, so your lifelong learning that we need to keep pursuing. And I see in the environment that you guys are in, I was quite intrigued. I went onto YouTube, I went onto your website, and it's heck of it interesting. I've got family that's in the film business, but on the warm and fluffy side, making movies and art directors and makeup directors, but their lives are crazy. Needless to say, my uncle never got married. He's 65, still traveling the world. My one friend never got married. They just married to their job, but they love it. It's their family. I think it's a nice network.
TV people never get married.
Yeah, I think what's nice is that there's definitely a space of happiness. Nelly, welcome back.
I do. I'm probably
Oh, shame. Okay. We won't bother you too much. When you've got stability and you can sit down and breathe, then we'll chat about your expectations, all right?
Okay, no.
100%. Okay, so just from my point of view, our job in this platform is we want to journey you through best practice on how to implement world-class change management strategies with success. So it's not to try and clone you to the theory and say this is how it must happen, step 1, step 2, step 3, but it's to give you a guidance and to teach you the best practice, making sure that you are successful. Because all of us on this process make a difference. Participation, guys, this is your platform. I'm here from my point of view to equip you with the skills, to take you through it. But please, we want sharing, we want engagement, we want participation. And you won't get the true value out of this unless you don't fully participate. As noted, it is a 2-day course, so we're going to manage our time. We've got a formal break at 10:15. Lunch, I'm not sure what time would you guys need to break for lunch. Is there a set time?
No set time. We normally see how the day goes.
Oh, you probably don't take lunch.
We do.
Oh, do you? Well done. I'm very proud of you guys. We come across so many companies that say, are you mad? What's that? And they actually don't know what to do themselves during lunch break. So we'll break for lunch, guys. We'll give you about 45 minutes. We can manage it, and then we'll be done by 4 o'clock this afternoon. We are a smaller group, so we may finish earlier. But as noted, if you guys need a body break because I'm talking too much or we're too busy, then give me a shout. We are going to make use of breakout rooms, so we will be engaging on different platforms. So there's a variety. We won't just be sitting stagnant staring at a screen all day long. Okay, then you're all familiar with accredited processes?
Yeah.
Okay, you know how to access your learner guide and your workbook and your portfolios, huh?
I'm printing now.
Awesome. We're burning forests. Who's printing there, Victor?
I am.
Tell him.
You're old school. There's one thing we challenge you to change.
He has stacks in his room of papers. That's old man.
It's a fire hazard. No, it's old school way. We've got to try and change it. I also struggle. I prefer working with a piece of paper.
Yeah.
I squiggle a lot. You'll see I've got pieces of paper all around me where I squiggle and I draw and it's difficult sticking to the electronic. But just to remind you, you've got your learner guides, guys. The theory is in the book. Everything we cover is in there. And then the workbook, after each section, we're going to refer you to the workbook. And as groups, you're going to complete those activities. And it's just a point of reinforcing the theory into practical, okay? And then the last, as you know, everything please to be typed in blue font. I'll take you through that just now for your portfolios. And then there's a couple of, because we're on the online platform, we have to request and remind the delegates, yes, we all know this, But just make sure that you do upload your ID, your CV, your full workbook, which is completed and initialed, and then your portfolio of evidence must please be done in blue. It just makes it easy for the assessors, who then can mark in red, and then the moderator will mark in another color. So the colors is purely for a practical purpose. Also, make sure you sign off your work, you filled in the checklist, the assessment plan, etc. And obviously double check you don't send any items in unanswered. It's a very cool short portfolio. It's not too complicated. We're going to do quite a nice summary of the work in any case before we finish off tomorrow. So no questions around the poo time, hey?
No.
I call it a poo because it's a sentiment. It's a POE, portfolio of evidence. We just will never make it a plural because then it becomes a horrible word. Okay. So guys, obviously, we're going to work through the portfolio. It is an accredited NQF level course, and it's a contract between yourselves and the assessor, and my role is just to make sure that you guys are 100% ready. Okay, and you're either going to find out two outcomes, competent or not yet competent, but then you get 3 chances to resubmit if needing resubmission, and then you'll get a CETA issued verification, and then please make sure you do type and upload your assessment by the deadline, and then obviously you need to sign an authenticity, declaration of authenticity. You're all familiar. This is to say that we didn't cut and paste from each other. That being said, I encourage delegates to always work together. Don't try and journey this on your own, but make sure you use your own words. Okay, makes the workload lighter. And then you're all happy for submission date, the 30th of October.
I'm happy.
Is it? No, it shouldn't be 30th of October. It should be 30th of September.
Oh, man.
I was just checking if you guys were reading properly. Yeah, it should be the 30th of September. I've taken a whole month of October and disappeared it. Okay, so from that point of view, guys, please make note, submission by the 30th of September. It is a month, and I think what's nice about this is you've got time and you can submit earlier if you are completed. And you'll see it's a very short portfolio. And with you running other programs, the sooner you dive into this, the better. Okay, then as I said, we're going to work through the activities as we go through today so that we make sure that we've got 100% completed formative guidelines. So during this process, you will be able to understand the basics of change, and that is, what is the concept of change? Determining when do we need to identify change? What are the different models? And we're going to discuss some of these models. Some of them, like you said, you've gone through it, but you were unconsciously going through it because you weren't aware that you were following the process. And then how to implement the process, and then lead change initiatives. And I think as you progress in business and you start managing and directing businesses, you need to be aware of what are the different initiatives that business requires. You're also going to accept that there is no normal or abnormal way of reacting to change. We're going to see change as an essential reality. And I think no one understands it better than the environment you guys are in, because you can't sit down and say, for this week, I'm going to do this day, 1 day, 2 day, 3, because your rate of change and your dynamic in your business creates an environment where you'd be concerned if you weren't having radical change. Then understanding and adapting to change is an attitudinal and under your control. So for some people who resist change, it becomes a bit of a burden. Where others embrace it, it becomes more of an experience. Recognize that going through a period of grieving for the way things are is okay. And I believe all of us experienced that in the last, as I've said, 18 months, that without sounding cliched, we are in the new normal, but it was a big shift, especially for us on this virtual platform. I mean, we used to train people face to face. I would be in a boardroom with you guys or a training venue, engaging with you. Now I'm talking to my computer screen all day long. So, and I rebelled against it initially. And now we've got 5 or 6 platforms we work on, and it's become like breathing oxygen. We see the opportunity, you're able to identify opportunity for change. And remember, change is always for the better. There is a level of improvement. Identify strategies for helping change to be accepted and implemented successfully. And that's where you have a proper tangible measure to say, this is where we started, this is what we implemented, this is what it looks like now. What is the feedback? And then cope, because you know. And that is, you're now aware of going through this change, And when things happen with a plan, then it becomes a bit more manageable. So to answer some questions, what is change? And you want me to change what? Often we get that question going on in our mind. And a change may either be transactional, transitional, or transformational. And they vary in predictability. In other words, we know what it's going to look like at the end versus we're going in blind. Or it's easy, we can go through it, there's no challenges. And we're going to unpack these three concepts throughout the next 2 days. So depending on the predictability versus the complexity of change. Right, so change, only 1/3 of strategic initiatives actually turn out exactly as designed. And that's because as we're progressing through the steps, we realize, but this isn't practical, that isn't tangible, and we have to be flexible in that approach. And I think a lot of the time we become so complacent with the way things are that only after realizing, but wait a minute, we've improved or we've progressed, do we realize that that strategy actually worked. Human nature, guys, production and plenty of other factors will have an impact on the results. And this is where we need to make sure we impact and keep our eye on the goal. Right, then the change challenge is all about the transition phase, and that's where you're not what you were, but not where you're going to be. And that's that where you're floating in the middle. You've moved in progress from point A to the middle, and you're now floating around. You're not quite where you want to be, but you know that there is a process that needs to be followed. An example we're giving you is with a new laptop, and you can even think about a new cell phone as well, like you noted. You're thrilled by the possibilities of things that you can now do with this new laptop. My husband bought me a very cool Spectra 360 HP. Now, when he said these words, I'm going, okay, and because my old laptop was like a weapon. I could use it as a protection mechanism, as a paperweight in a tornado, it would stick. And he bought me this fine little thing, and I was so excited because I realized it's got touch screen, it can move around, and it was great. I'm excited about the size of its memory. I could save a whole lot more stuff on it. And I was really stimulated by the idea of working on things, and it really is a sexy laptop. But I had no clue what I was doing. I had to go to HP twice because I'd somehow blocked something. And some of the features, like flipping over the screen, I did it, but then I kept touching the screen and I kept messing around. So it made it work like a laptop and a iPad or touchscreen. But I was also got worried, and I got anxious that I won't figure out everything before the next time I have to use this laptop. So I literally did, for my first 3 training sessions, I had my new laptop on the side, and I still worked with my skedonk for 3 training sessions. Okay, I have to switch. So that is exactly what change is when we have to try and move into a new space. Guys, you happy with the pace? This is an introduction, so we haven't really kicked off yet.
Oh, wow.
So it was just like getting all excited to get into change management. So any questions so far?
I think what's going to be interesting for me is you talk about gadgets, they don't talk back. So in a working space, you got people to work with. So that should be interesting. But I have no question.
Okay, yeah, we'll definitely make sure you're equipped with that one. Okay, so if we look at with change, I must give up something to get something. And in this instance, I had to give up my old laptop, which, guys, is in the cupboard now. And the same with your old cell phone. Eventually, when you grasp that new phone, you've got to give it up. It's a progressive move. It's human nature for us to want to improve. Unlearn what I knew about the old programs, adjust to things that are very different, and then temporarily give up my cushion of comfort. And that's that comfortable place that we sometimes have to sacrifice. But then when we get into that space of new, it becomes so much more exciting. And it's the same with human nature. We'll be looking at it definitely. Okay, think of a change you have been through recently. Did you feel threatened at the time? And did it actually open up new opportunities, insights, and possibilities? So, guys, I want you to open up your cameras and let's answer this question. Think of a change. One of you, I think, Kakisi, you mentioned a new cell phone.
Yes.
So what has made you uncomfortable with that cell phone?
You know, the thing of having to move things to the new phone, and now, like you said, I have to learn other features. I have to download other stuff. I have to, and it takes time for you. And it's just moving from one model to the other. It's not the most hardest thing ever, but it's something that I've been using this thing for past 3 years, and I'm used to it and I'm comfortable with it. I don't see any reason why I must change to something better, they will say. So yeah,
You coined the one there, the comfortableness.
Yes.
And when you get it, it's that uncertainty. But if you look at how adaptable we have come, remember the very first cell phone you had?
Yeah.
Versus now, we do everything with our cell phones.
Correct.
So it's become, we've actually replaced 19 jobs with our cell phones, huh?
God damn.
Scary, huh? We don't need administrators, we don't need office filers, we don't need receptionists, we don't need telecom lines, so anyone in telecom, we don't need cameras, we don't need films, developers of the actual photos, we don't need photo albums, we don't need a CD rack, we don't need an LP, a CD player or a Walkman, where the list goes on. But we've adapted to that, and soon this thing's going to be replacing a lot more in our lives. So it's a different space. Victor, from your side, anything that you felt uncomfortable that have had to change? Thanks, Kagiso.
Not recently. No. I can't think of something.
Okay. Lunga?
Recently, no. Recently, no.
And anything you can relate to? Or where you had to change something?
I think, well, in the beginning when I joined VVP, like this is four years ago, I think, just meeting everyone and just and not in the and just feel like getting a sense of how they work. You know, firstly knowing the human being, and then getting a feel for them slowly and figuring out how to bring the best out of like each individual. You know, I think people like we work with a lot of camera people and editors, and each one is different. So trying to treat them the same way, but inspiring them differently, you know, because they do things in a different way, basically.
Yeah, and I think it's also a space of learning as well, to impart that knowledge to people as well. And the empathy that you feel with people that join the company now, because you guys have grown, and it's I mean, your rate of your pace of operation is crazy. And you can imagine how daunting it is for the new individuals that join your team. It's like they're going to stand there twitching, going, what the heck?
Yeah, very true.
So, yeah. Okay, Nelly, from your side?
At the moment, I can't really think of anything.
Have you hussard down a bit? You're still running around?
No, I'm still on the road.
Okay. Okay, well, just let us know when you've calmed down, and then we'll engage. But I don't want to distract. Okay, so I think if you take that any change, and it's like you say, moving house, buying a car, getting a new cell phone, even changing banks, new job responsibilities, accountabilities, new financial year in your business, new clients taken on, new staff members, new processes, new equipment, all of that is change. New ownership, new partnerships, new JVs. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And even where we're operating now, I mean, we've adapted very well over the last couple of months. You don't get anywhere without your mask anymore. And that was in the beginning awkward, because how many times did you not go out and realize, crumbs, I don't have my mask? Now masks are everywhere. They're in your car, in your cubbyhole, in your every jacket pocket, in your door. We now have adapted. So the next phase is when we don't have to wear masks, how that's going to happen. Okay, so change is inevitable, guys, and thanks for sharing. I think the theory will make light of some of it. And then reflect what is change. What did you do that helped you accept the change and move on? And what did other people do that helped? And I think it's where we embrace change. We don't rebel it. And we also defy the fact that we don't try and defy the fact that it's needed. Because as soon as you become stagnant, you become complacent, demotivated, unproductive. And that's where you're getting stuck in a routine. Get up in the morning, go to work, do your job, go home. Get up in the morning, go to job. I mean, it just carries on, and we don't feel inspired. Do you ever remember feeling confused or angry? I think all of us can relate to some point. And if we use our current state of where we are now, the confusion last year, March, when we were alerted that we may go into lockdown for a couple of days, and that ending up carrying on and on and on, that uncertainty and any change results in a feeling of confusion and uncertainty. And we're going to discuss that. And do you have any moments of eager anticipation and energy? And that's where you anticipate change with a positive light, and you can't wait. You know it's for the better, or we get promoted at work, you're going into a new job or new role, the impact that it has on your demeanor. So the case for change, there's nothing permanent except change. And a couple of quotes is, an executive is someone with a constructive discontent with the way things are. So when we talk about the rate of change, this is the longtime CEO of IBM. The very first CEO of IBM, actually in 1981 or 1979, said there's no space for more than 3 desktop computers. Guess where that CEO is? So if you want to truly understand something, try and change it. And we're going to look at Kurt Lewin's model as well a bit later, because, guys, we have to try and relate to that change. So change and courage are related. For the tempest of change is upon us. How do we welcome the storm? Do we ride its waves and shouts of bring it on, or do we cover in fear and risk being buried in the rubble of its aftermath while it races on, unrelenting and unknowing? So a bit of poetic explanation of the fact that we need courage to change, and when we do, we'll definitely reap the benefits. Okay, so it's not the critic who counts, not the many who point out how the strong man stumbles, or when the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the man in the arena whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at best knows the end of a triumph of high achievement, and who at worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who never known victory or defeat.
Nice.
Yes, another very poetic justice around what is change and the fact that we have to take risk. We then sit in a space of resistance, guys, and I think resistance is we're uncomfortable, so we deny it. And there are many reasons why we resist change. And it's not required, it's too ambitious, it's not practical, it's so hopeless, it's too political, we don't have the environment ready for that yet. We're doing okay, so why change? So, I mean, we can go on with this list of change, but one thing that we do is we as a human being, and I think you're all going to relate to this next video, we are intimidated, threatened, and fearful of change, but is it the change or is it the process that takes us through change that makes us uncomfortable? So I'd like to just listen. Australian writer, very well known for his understanding of change in the human concept. So people love change, they just don't like transition.
Why don't we do these things? We all know them. Why don't we do them? Well, they require change. And they say people don't like change, you know. They say people hate change, people are allergic to change, people resist change, people hate change, people don't like change. Do you think that's true? Yes? No? Not sure? All right, let's try it this way. People love change, don't they? I mean, they just love change. I mean, I come to work every day, people lining up at my office, they say, can we change some stuff? I say, why? They say, just change some stuff. I mean, just for the fun of the change, let's just change it up a bit. People just love change. Yes or yes? No. I would argue that people do in fact love change. I would argue that people do in fact love change. They just don't like transition. That's the heart of it. I'd like to lose myself 10 or 15 pounds.
You know, I would love to lose myself 10 or 15 pounds. It's the transition I'm not that fond of. So we come here this week. We realize there's going to be change in the industry. We realize there's going to be change in your business. But between you and the change is what? Transition. Transition, and that's what gets people bogged down. I got leaders come to me all the time and say, I gave this guy a promotion and he wasn't happy. Why is that? The answer is because he already knows what his job is. He's already good at his job. That's why you're giving him a promotion. And he probably already enjoys his job. That's why he's pretty good at it. You're giving him a job. He doesn't know what it is. He doesn't know what it involves. He doesn't know if he's going to like it. And he doesn't know if he's going to be good at it. There's a lot of uncertainty there. That's the transition. And the CEO or the leader will come back to me and say, but we gave him a big pay raise. So what? When do you give a pay raise? At the beginning of the transition. By the time the transition gets difficult, they've spent the pay raise. They might have even spent the pay raise before they got the pay raise. So when the transition gets difficult, the pay raise isn't going to get them through the transition. So what's going to move them through the transition? Because transition is business in the future. There used to be a time where we could say business involves transition. Oh no, not anymore. Business is transition now. There used to be a time where we'd go through a transition in a business, or we'd go through a transition in an industry, or we'd go through a transition in an organization, and then there'd be like a resting place where we could sort of enjoy the fruits of our success. A sort of a bit of a plateau where we could all pat each other on the back and say, hey, we did good, and let's take a breather and then we'll move on. That doesn't exist anymore in American business. That doesn't exist anymore in global business. Business doesn't involve transition now. Business is transition. You're going to get through this transition, and what's going to come then? Another transition. And people are resistant to transition. And because people make up organizations, organizations are resistant to transition. Organizations, but the best organizations in our modern culture embrace transition. They are hungry for transition. They go looking for transition. And of course, the icon companies, you know, are just cannibals of their own business and their own products. Just cannibalizing their own products. And of course, the best example of that in our modern culture is Apple computers. They bring out an iPod, first generation. 12 months later, they bring out a second generation iPod, cannibalizing their own product. 13 and a half months later, they bring out a third generation iPod, cannibalizing their own product again. And 9.5 months after that, they bring out their fourth generation iPod before anyone can get anything else anywhere near the marketplace. A lot of companies would have come up with the first generation iPod, sat back and said, we've got it now. 12 months later, their competition would have been caught up. No. The best companies, they go looking for transition now. They cannibalize their own products. They cannibalize their own services, constantly improving themselves, constantly wanting to become the best version of themselves, a better version of themselves in every experience. That's what business is about in the future. The very best business leaders in the next 20 years will be experts in transition. You want to excel in the business culture? You want to excel in your organization? You want to add value wherever you go? Begin to study transition.
Okay. So transition, guys, makes sense.
Makes sense.
Okay, so we have to, and I think we can all relate to that transition, and I think we can relate to the frustrations of complacency where things don't change and we become stagnant. Okay, so another concept, homeostasis, the human resistance to change, and that is the tendency of the body to seek and maintain a condition of equilibrium within its internal environment, even faced with external changes. And that's where we sort of follow the lead, and we stay in a happy bubble, happy, safe space. And when someone wants to shift, we sort of rebel. But when we see everyone else sort of moving into that space, we then adapt. Okay, so the basics relating to change. We're going to look at 4 sections for purpose of process and for your portfolio. The first section is what is the concept of change in detail, then determining the need for change, and that is when is it right time to change, because rightly said, some businesses are able to adapt and sort of progress quickly, but when is the right time to change? And then what are the models we can refer to apply the theory into practice for change, and then how to actually implement a very successful, efficient change process. Okay, guys, are there any questions before we start?
Not for me.
All happy?
Yep.
Okay. Right, so let's kick off with the concept for change. We've got 10 more minutes and then we'll break at 10, okay? I'm just still waiting for Nicholas to log on, and then hopefully he's in our platform by then. But the concept of change, and I think change is not unusual or abnormal. It's all around us all of the time. And I think sometimes when someone says we need to discuss change management, there's sort of a hesitancy which we've expressed. The trick is not to let it happen to us, but to manage it and channel it and benefit from it. And I think the biggest rebellion to change is when things happen without our consent or without our being prepared. So we kick into a mindset of reactiveness, and that's where we kick against it. That's when we rebel against it, and we don't have a positive mindset towards change. So the definition of key terms, there's 2. The first one is change. A change is defined, and this is the theoretical definition of change, is defined as anything hardware, software, system component, services, documents, or processes that is deliberately introduced into the production environment and which may affect a service level agreement or affect the functioning of the environment or one of its components. So in your working environment, there are so many opportunities for change. Introducing new equipment, new technology, new service providers, new staff members, new team leaders, new vehicles, new methodologies, new memorandums of understanding, new platforms. And in all these, change is inevitable. The second one is the management of that change. So the change management is the systematic approach that we need to follow when dealing with change, both from the perspective of an organization and individual. So both as VVP as well as its team members. At somewhat ambiguous term, change management has at least 3 different aspects. Number 1, adapting to change, controlling change, and affecting change. And that's where you guys come in. As you progress in the business, you have to take accountability for change within your division. A proactive approach of dealing with change is at the core of all 3 of these aspects, and that's where we need to make sure that we adapt, we control, and we affect. And for an organization, change management means defining and implementing procedures and or technologies to deal with the change in the business. So from a personal perspective, we need to make sure that we adapt, we control that, and we make sure it is sustained. And from a business, we need to make sure that everything we put in place supports that change mentality. And this makes us move and helps us to deal with changes in the business environment and to profit from changing opportunities. Okay, so those are 2 very generic, simple theory explanations for change and change management. The change process, like conflict handling, like problem solving, like decision making, is a process of step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. And if we look at the change management process, there are 3 phases: how we prepare for change, how we manage this change, and how we reinforce it by making sure that we don't slip back into old habits. And I think in a business, we've got certain tools available to us, like we've got standard operating procedures, we've got our code of conduct, we've got our contracts, and we've got our policy and procedures. And these are all in place to make sure when there's a change initiative that we are prepared for it as a business. We have ability to manage it, in other words, keep our finger on the pulse, as well as to reinforce. So let's look at a little bit more detail on each. Phase 1, preparing for the change, and this is the output that we expect in phase 1. Change characteristics profiles. In other words, here's what the picture looks like now. That's what we need to look like going forward, and how these are going to affect. The organizational attributes the profile. In other words, what within the organization do we need to change to make sure that we are ready for this? Changing our management strategies. Guys, a couple of years ago, we had 10 and 20-year strategies. It was cool, it was easy, it was manageable. And as the introduction of technology, and obviously the fourth industrial revolution we know is here, it's on us in speed force or light force. But the challenge is we've now had to downscale our strategy. We're dealing with companies that have a 3 to 5 year strategy, and it's pushing it when you're going 10 to 15 year strategy. So managing the strategy to say, how do we as a business stay abreast, stay afloat, and stay, what's the big word there? Relevant. And we can't do that if we keep looking at our yellow paper and our blue papers that are not referring to adapting to change going forward. Change management team structure. Yes, we need new thinkers, we need a younger generation, we need the new applicable generation, and we need to change the way we make decisions. You've still got a various generations within business, and you're all familiar with that. You've got your baby boomers still in your business, you've got your X's, your Y's, your Z's, you've got your ARs coming in now. And the complexity of managing that, we need a new look in management. And it's not saying everyone's going to, that's of experience is going to get fired or put on early retirement. It's saying we change the way we operate in our business structure. And generally, a lot of the time, companies are flattening their hierarchy to make sure that we adapt better to change as opposed to waiting for the red tape decisions. And then sponsor, assessment, structure, and roles. People involved and impacted by the change process are involved in this. We're clear on what the structure looks like, and we also make sure that everybody in the business knows exactly what their areas of responsibility are. So in phase 1, these are the things that need to be taken into consideration when we prepare for a change initiative. And it may even be, guys, a simple project like moving offices or changing a client or taking on a new client, maybe focusing in a different industry spectrum. Now we've moved to stage 2, and phase 2 is we have to manage this change. So the outputs for stage 2 or phase 2 is, what are our communication plans going to look like going forward? What are the objectives, and how are we going to communicate this across the broad spectrum and make sure that it reaches all impacted parties? Then we need a sponsor roadmap. What are the processes and the areas of accountability, responsibility, and authority for our sponsors? And then a training plan. When there's something new in business, we need to equip people with those skills. And remember, you've got an array of ability and a diversity of people working in the business. So you can't just assume because we get it at this level that they're going to get it at operational and functional and tactical level. So that plan has to be put in place quite tangibly to say, okay, fine, this is how we're going to introduce it. This is the rollout plan before we preempt the plan. And then the coaching. Each one of us in the business has a responsibility to coach, and that is to support our team members, support our colleagues, our managers, our staff, everybody in the business to be able to supply or provide the initiatives used for that change to go ahead. And the coaching plan is always a very important part of the communication plan as well. And that's where transparency comes in. That's where predictability of effects comes in, and we also make sure that no one's left in the dark. You know, the mushroom mentality. And then the resistant management plan. And that's where you've preempted that some people are going to resist. They're going to keep moving back into that happy place where they are frozen and they don't want to change. What are you going to do as a team and as management to make sure that those individuals are on board? Okay, so it's quite important that we manage that type of thinking. Okay, and then phase 3. And guys, phase 3 is the stage where we look at the reinforcement. So we've gone through the planning, we've implemented, we've allowed it to happen. How do we make sure that we reinforce this? You have to have reinforcement mechanisms. And remember, you're not going to disperse the old to replace the new. You're going to have something as a backup plan. We no longer work with a standard 10% contingency. We look at a plan A, B, and C. And our contingencies go up to 30% of our time and effort. Compliance, audit reports, and these are things to tell us, have we adapted well? Where are gaps where we need to reinforce? Where are gaps where we need to make sure we marry back into the compliance? And the important thing is always make sure that we're measuring apples with apples. It doesn't help we've got a new system in place, which is still trying to measure it with the thinking and the principles and the methodologies of the old. Corrective plans. So yes, where we've slipped, where we've dropped the ball as business, we've got a corrective plan in place, and that corrective plan tells us, fine, these are the areas of concern. How do we make sure that we put action plans in place to realign the business? So bring them back on track as much as possible. Individual and group recognition. Accolade those that deserve an accolade. Give everybody some form of enforcing process, feedback. Remember, give them the positive, tell them where the areas they need to look at, and then reinforce it with some form of recognition. And guys, it doesn't always have to be a paycheck or a bonus. Just a well-done accolade sometimes suffices for individuals. And then clearly...
A paycheck and a bonus could be nice.
Of course, yes. That's the old way of doing things, apparently, now, Kagishu. The younger generation just wants a well done in public. But yeah, we know that that's always going to be a good reward for all of us. The problem is that we set a precedent and people do so well for so long that they expect it. In the 1 month they don't do well, it has a penalty. So it changes the mindset. And then definitely the celebration of the success is acknowledge where you were, where you as a team have come to, and what the benefits and the progresses are in that space. And then post-mortem and after-action review, to sit back as a team and say, fine, guys, that's where we started. These were the hurdles and the obstacles we experienced. This is how we fixed it. What have we learned going forward? So before we introduce our next plan or our next change initiative, what are the things we need to be more vigilant of? All right. So we're going to break for tea now, guys. I'm going to stick to the 10 o'clock, 10:15 as opposed to 10:15 to 10:30. Are there any questions?
So far, so good.
Okay. Guys, I'm going to log off because we're going to be stopping our recording so we don't sit with a whole bundle of quietness. We call it in this platform AIP, awkward intentional pauses. So what we're going to do is I'm going to log off, but I'm going to log back on, and then we'll kick off again at 10:15. Happy with that?
Yep. Happy.
Okay, Lunga has dropped off.
I think he sent a message saying that he was just on his way to the office for some reason. So I'm sure he'll join again at 10:15.
Okay.
Maybe he's having network issues, so it's better at the office.
Okay, and Nicholas? So if you guys can maybe, Nicholas was also, he said he was on the road to join us, so he'll probably be with us after tea time then.
I think so.
Okay. All right, guys, so I'm going to log off and then I'm going to log back on because we want to pause the recording post each break.